Okay, good evening. Let me call to order this meeting of Tuesday, July the 5th of the Concord Township Zoning Commission. Heather, if you could call the roll, please.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lingenfelter?
Present.
Mr. Ruppert?
Present.
Mr. Schindler?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
And Mr. Eiffelise?
Present. Thank you, members. The first thing I want to note is, first of all, to thank Rich Peterson for chairing the June meeting, as I was absent last month. I did review and observe the meeting through YouTube later on, so thank you, Rich. Thank you, members, for your understanding for that. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of June the 7th. Have any comments or questions regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I have one correction. Page 5, line 19. The line states, it's a comment that I made, but it says Chairman Lingenfelter, and I guess it should have said Vice Chair Peterson on line 19. Other than that, fine.
Page 5.
Page 5 at the bottom, line 19.
We'll have the Zen Master Hiram double check here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to do that.
That's, I don't know where you are. Page 5.
Line 19.
Big page 5 or little? Big page 5.
Of 14. Page 5 at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Go to line 19, bottom corner. Got it?
Left corner, right corner.
Right corner.
Page 17 in the little box.
Okay, page 17,
In the little box.
line 19, Chairman Lingenfelter.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Got it.
got it. Okay.
Any
That's all
other comments or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as noted.
And I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Correspondence, next item on the agenda here this evening. I've received no correspondence in the last month. I'll turn over to Frank.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Hiram?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Andy?
I received an email from a resident regarding some specific properties. I directed him to have Heather. Had a couple questions on some things about, just township general business. And I told him that it probably would be best to get in contact with Heather and I gave him her contact information because it was more a zoning administration issue than it was a zoning commission issue.
Very good.
So that was it.
Rich, any correspondence?
I did have a conversation. I was approached by the Homeowners Association president over on Beers Road about the house that he'd complained about being abandoned. And he thanked the township because the people have now done some cleanup. He said the only problem now is skunks are in the house. But other than that, the yard's a lot better.
Very good. Okay. Good to hear that, at least. Moving on this evening to public participation. Heather, I assume there's nobody on the phone.
Correct.
And there's no one present in the public here this evening. So we'll move on to the meat of our agenda, new business. These are a few items that we're beginning to discuss. I'm not sure how many of them we want to take up this evening, but we'll start to pick off what we can. Beginning with the Town Hall Neighborhood District. I appreciate, Heather, the effort to put this together because we've been talking about this, and especially in lieu of the recent change there on that Town Hall. I think this is appropriate. If you wouldn't mind reviewing that with the numbers for us, kind of a refresh, if you could, please.
Sure, yeah. I put a couple of these maps that I made on slide 2. Brian might be able to pull that up.
Great.
We can put it on the TV over here. Boy, I should have went anyway.
There we go.
Whatever reason, it always cuts off the sides of the map, so I apologize if things are cut off on some of my next slides. But here I just put together, this is an area photograph with the zoning layer overlaid over that of the area where the remaining town hall neighborhood district is, which is the striped kind of opaque area. It's a 10-acre parcel on the north side of Concord Hamden Road. It's surrounded by manufacturing zoning on the west, which is the blue, and then the bright yellow is the R1 residential, and the dark brown is that town hall commons district. To the north of the site is Interstate 90, and on the south side of Concord Hamden Road, there's more R1, and then R3 multifamily. What used to make up the town hall neighborhood district was more obviously than this 10-acre piece, but over the last several years, the trustees have decided to rezone some of this property to residential at the request of some of the property owners. These were all made by application, but then were ultimately approved to be rezoned. So just a quick history of how that kind of transpired. The property on the south side of Concord Hamden Road that was originally Town Hall neighborhood was rezoned to R1 in January of 2019. It was about 8.5 acres of land. It's since then been subdivided into 8 lots where there are currently a duplex on each one of those lots. And then on the north side, actually the first piece to be rezoned to R1 was a 2-acre lot that was in April of 2018. At the time in 2018, there was a non-conforming residence on the property along with 2 barns, which have since then been removed. The house is still there, but is vacant. The property's not been occupied since it's been rezoned to R1. And then the most current piece of property that was rezoned was the approximate 6 acres on the north side of Concord Hamden Road. The lots aren't split on this map, but if you recall, they were split into 1-acre lots. Trustees did ultimately vote to approve that rezone in May of 2022. The owner is in the process of building duplexes on those 6 lots.
Heather, is that gas well going to be plugged up? Is it still active?
The gas well is still there. I've not the 10-acre piece of property that the well rests on. I have not spoken to the owner of that recently, but if you recall at the hearing that George Davis wasn't sure, what was going on with the well, nor did he really have a say in it. It was his understanding at the time that it's not been active, but it's still there, but not active for the last 3 years.
Aren't there 2 wells on that property? I'm not mistaken, they're
I
going
know
further back.
Yeah, there's some tanks and wells back there, all in one area, kind of. I thought it was just 1 well though.
I thought it was 2, if I remember correctly.
If we go maybe to, I don't know.
The other
Go to
well,
the next slide. I have like a topography map. You can see a little bit of the underlying layer
the
on
first
here.
well is in between the properties, and the second well is, north, very close to the stream. You'll see 2 dots there, or whatever it may be. If I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
that's where the second well is.
Okay, I see that now. What you're talking about.
Isn't the state requiring now the municipalities where wells are, if they're not being active anymore, they're supposed to be plugged and sealed because of leakage and, stuff?
I'm not aware of the state laws.
I just thought I heard something about that. But you haven't heard it?
I haven't heard that.
Okay.
Something I can look into and see if.
Yeah, would you please?
Heather, when George Davis came for the most recent one, was he not, and I don't recall, investigating the abandonment or the capping of that well? Especially the one that Hiram just pointed out on that, right on the property line?
There's two.
I'm not sure what, I know that Mr. Davis was moving the drive off his lot so that, because you have to be able to access
Yes.
the well, and where he wanted to build his home, it was gonna interfere, so they're moving the driveway over there, but other than that, I'm not aware of Mr. Davis doing any due diligence and as far as abandoning that well. It was my understanding that was part of, it was one of the Osborne wells, so might be difficult or time consuming. I'm not sure on how to get that plugged or removed, or I'm not sure what the intent of that is going to be moving forward, if they're going to activate it again or not.
I guess Frank's question is related to, does the township have any liability or recourse involving the abandonment of a gas well?
Right.
No gas well on private property, it's a private property, but I don't know.
It's on private property, but of course, we're still, I think, somewhat responsible for something like that. The only reason I brought that up is because, and I was just wondering if the state of Ohio has anything like that.
Frank, I've got two in my neighborhood right now. They're building houses right next door to them on both sides. So there's two.
Yeah,
They're just a bunch of pipes.
yeah, just a bunch of pipes, but still, if they're not sealed up properly, they could be leaking still. That's the thing. And that's why I was
I could
wondering.
have swore that George, I thought he said that well was being capped and was gonna basically be,
I think he did.
I thought he said that he was,
Right.
that it was no longer a producing well and it was gonna
Right.
be capped.
Right.
So,
There was a crew back there working this past week, a lot of trucks back there all around the well. So maybe they're capping it now. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay. That's good.
Mr. Lucas, are you aware of any state laws about inactive wells and community?
It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I'm
Yeah.
not aware of any recent revisions to that. Generally, the gas wells are included within the utilities, which is really not subject to township regulation. So I'll check that for the commission and get an email out on it to everybody. So
Okay, thank you.
in terms of the liability, I don't think there would be any liability on the part of the township based on state regulations largely preempting that kind of regulation on the part of the township. But I'll check the specific question.
So this issue is before us for discussion, review, presumably is to continue the existence of the Town Hall Neighborhood District for the remaining 10 acres, 10 plus acres, correct?
Correct.
So in the big picture, things as we look at, as I look at it, what's also abuts it is there, Ravenna's the Town Hall Commons. So I didn't review this in detail, but help me distinguish the difference between Town Hall Commons and Town Hall Neighborhood.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just to be proactive and get on the
yeah,
minutes.
please.
If you look under chapter 22, 22.01 defines on the page 22.2 what the purpose is for Town Hall Commons, THC district, and then the Town Hall Neighborhood District, THA. So that would be a good starting point to see that differential, which I know Heather was going to point out, but I thought I'd get the jump on it.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Well, just for members without reference there, the Town Hall Commons purpose was to provide and preserve, enhance the historic center of the township at Concord, Hamden, Ravenna Road, Crossroads area through a mixture of community facilities, business, and recreational uses that serves as a gathering place for the community. Whereas the purpose for the Town Hall neighborhood was to complement the historic center of the township with selective community-oriented business and residential uses. So therein you see the distinguishing factors there. So there isn't much, I guess is what because I did recall reading that in terms of what's the difference. So as we consider this, I look at the corner of Ravenna and Concord Hamden there, the northwest corner that abuts this. That is I assume residential use, or I can't recall what's at the corner.
Church.
Oh, that's the church.
That's Concord Alliance Church.
Yeah. Is there any reason to consider that while we're considering the town hall neighborhood, or?
Mr. Chairman, wasn't there a discussion when we rezoned these 6 lots on the north side of
Yes.
Concord Hamden, that this resident next to the freeway was interested in that property for pasture land? I thought I recall,
Yeah.
I thought he said that this gentleman back here wanted to buy that property and graze cows or something back there.
Mr. Chairman, I do have
Yeah,
a couple
Heather.
comments on that. Yeah, and I was going to talk about that too. So that is correct. George Davis talked about the 10-acre piece, and it did transfer to Steve Lovick, who now is the current owner. Steve Lovick lives to the north. His residence abuts this property. He also now owns the other 2-acre piece that was rezoned to R1, where the house rests. So Mr. Lovick now owns he lives on this R1 piece here. He owns this as well, and this. I did notice that he's planted some crops. As you drive by on Concord Hamden Road now, he planted some kind of crops. I don't know if it's on this 2-acre piece or if it's a little further back, but I've noticed that he started some agricultural use on part of that property. Like I said, I haven't spoken to the owner, but that would be something that I definitely would want to do as we continue our conversations about potentially, changing the
Which piece
district.
does he own, other than the 10 acres?
Next to the house,
Right, the one on Concord Hamden,
Yeah.
on the right-hand side.
The 2-acre piece just west of the church.
Okay,
The
okay,
R1
okay,
piece.
that one right there.
Yeah.
All right. So he's got this plus the 10. All right.
So, I mean, in the short term, it looks like his plans is to farm or do some kind of agricultural use. Not sure what the long-term plan is for the property owner. But that's definitely something that I would want to, reach out to the property owner. Maybe if you wanted to come to a future meeting and discuss it, or speak with one of the board members, what his intentions are. I'm sure we can get in touch.
Procedurally, isn't that proper to contact the property? We're considering, obviously, we're considering this
Yeah.
change to R1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, since I've been here, if we've actually rezoned people's property without them applying for it, other than over at the Capital District. Right, we did reach out to property owners, yes. I would say it would be standard to reach out to property owners if the township was going to initiate a change on the zoning district. Obviously, we would have to do legal notice when it got to that point, but we'd want to definitely communicate with the property owner in advance.
We did it
To not surprise.
as a courtesy. We weren't required to do it, but we did it as a courtesy.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
Good idea.
yeah.
Anything else to present or
well,
bring to our
you know,
attention, Heather? about
Just,
that? Yeah.
just that, on the topography map, there are some challenges with developing this 10-acre piece.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a significant drop from the right-of-way, the elevation, and you start to get into some more environmentally sensitive areas at the back of the property, streams and wetlands, which would impact the buildability of the site, which has been a challenge for previous developers looking at the site and how they want to utilize it. It's much more costly to try to develop the back due to those terrain issues. But just want to point that out. And then I did include a survey map of the site that was recorded online. This was when George Davis had split out his lots for the for the duplexes on the north side, just to give you dimensions, if you had questions about, you know, the dimensions of the lot itself. I did provide, just for easy reference to you, what are some of the permitted uses and conditionally permitted uses in this district. I do know that when the township initially wanted to adopt the Town Hall Neighborhood District, they envisioned some type of more of a residential component within there, kind of like a mixed use. However, those residential uses really did not get included in here, other than kind of like the care facilities and the nursing homes. So there's not a true, you know, single residential component to those permitted uses within that district.
Does THN have agriculture in it?
Well, so in a township, we are only allowed to regulate agriculture on lots less than 5 acres in size. So if the lot is over 5 acres, our zoning cannot regulate it. So right now, the 10-acre piece being farmed, he's allowed to do that. There are no regulations. When you get under the 5 acres, that's when we do have some requirements in the zoning resolution for farming and agricultural uses.
So right now, there's really no reason to change, is there?
Just, you know, one of the recommendations from the Lake County Planning Commission, when we asked for the recommendation on the 6 acres, the 6 lots on the north, they did make the recommendation that we rezone those, and they also mentioned that the township should rezone this 10-acre piece as well, thereby eliminating, eliminating the Town Hall Neighborhood District. So that was one of the reasons why I thought, well, hey, if they're recommending it, maybe we should have another discussion about the future of this district, since we've been over the last couple of years just rezoning it to a different district anyway. So there's nothing in front of us at the moment that, you know, but it
That dictates that we have to do it.
so it's just trying to be a little bit proactive, or we do, or we're okay with, you know, it being the last piece of Town Hall Neighborhood. I think when you look at the dimensional standards for Town Hall Neighborhood District, this lot really can't be split into any other smaller lots unless there were some variances granted, due to the fact that the minimum lot frontage at the right-of-way is 100 feet. And that's exactly what they have right now. So without any variances to the lot dimensions, this couldn't be split into some smaller lots. So thought that was important to kind of point out. And the other type of uses that are allowed in here, there really isn't anything unique in this district that you can't do in another commercial district. So by potentially eliminating the Town Hall Neighborhood District on the map, and then possibly from the text, because if we were going to rezone the map, we would also want to modify the text as well.
There was also a problem with sewer access in that property, because it had to come uphill to Concord Hamptons. You had to have a pumping station. That was a problem way back when we talked about this. The only alternative was to go through this gentleman's property over to Ravenna Road and tie in a sewer there. But, you know, if you were going to build any of these, you know, restaurant or anything back there, you wouldn't have sewer access.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't even know if sewer exists at Ravenna Road, at the freeway.
It does. But you may be right, but I think it does.
Yeah.
Can we rezone it without the owner's permission?
Yes, you could. Yeah. I mean, he could come to the public hearings and speak in opposition to it, but right, you don't necessarily have to have the agreement of the property owners to rezone the property.
But wouldn't it be better if he would come here with an application to rezone it to R1?
Well, I don't, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mike?
I don't think it's better. I think it might be better for the property owner, but I mean, it's one of the three methods of rezoning, one initiation by the zoning commission, one by the property owner, and one for the trustees that bring it down originally to the zoning commission and that. So, and then the property owner gets two bites, that's subject to the rezoning, gets two bites at the apple. They have the public hearing in front of the zoning commission, and then same public hearing in front of the trustees themselves and that.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Mike. Well,
You want a motion?
actually, no, I had another, my comments actually, now I was going to ask around for comments, but I'm having difficulty prescribing something that is, has a lot of restrictions in order to develop it as R1 in the first place, as already pointed out. The topography, the environmental issues, water, sewer, maybe not water, but if we, obviously, I know, we all know, anything is developable, okay, for a cost. Is there any consideration to just preserve it? Open space? Is there creating a, well, this is larger than finding an agricultural and open space district. Maybe the property owner would get some tax advantages that way, I'm not sure.
They would have to apply for
Tax
that,
wise, he
they would
does.
have to apply through that to the auditor's office. They would have to go through the
Their
state,
plan.
they would have to be, I think it's a CAUV.
But within our zoning districts, is there something to say that,
We don't have any districts in the text that
yeah.
create that kind of district.
open space?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we don't have anything that has a specific use within any zoning district for open space, number one. Number two, if you, let's say hypothetically that was the case, you shouldn't be doing that anyway, because you basically result in the taking of any
Yeah.
value for the property.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that answer.
Yeah,
before
I
said it.
know you did.
But I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we crossed the T and dot the I, just thinking out of the box.
I'd be more concerned about conditional uses.
Mm-hmm.
What conditional uses are allowed
Under
under the
under this
THC
one?
versus R1? Because we already know what happens with conditional uses.
We do. We do. That's a very good question.
That would be my bigger concern, is what could potentially go in there if we leave it as it is?
Yeah,
in
it's
the
all,
town hall?
Mr. Chairman, it's all set up in Schedule 22.3 in terms of the uses permitted in the THN district. 22.4 is the page for it.
Bed and breakfast,
This is what it's remember now.
adult or child care. Residential care facility. Hospice care. Surface extraction of sand, gravel, or other earth materials. Outside dining. Child or adult care. A whole bunch of accessories.
So, Mr. Langenfelter, under the R1, so you were asking about what some of the conditionally permitted uses would be. Those you can find in section 15, but as far as if it went R1, some of the conditional uses would be an adult group home, arboretum, a camp, a church or a place of worship, a community center, a community park, a playground, a home for the aging, hospice care facility, a library, a museum, a neighborhood park, residential care facility, a school, college, or university, and then the typical permitted uses such as a single-family dwelling or a two-family dwelling. Golf course, government and public uses.
No gas station.
No car wash or gas
No
station.
car wash.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. Under THN, do we allow car washes?
No,
Oh,
no.
Okay. that's a good-
I did summarize those in the little handout that I provided for you today, as far as what the
Oh, yes.
permitted and conditionally
Yes,
permitted
sorry.
uses were. Just so it was easier to look at quicker. But they are all listed there, and if it's conditional use, I indicated next to it.
But all those would require a sewer.
I would say.
More than
no.
likely, yes.
Except
Yeah, or,
Except for
yeah.
except for number 11. Surface
Right.
extraction.
Yeah, but couldn't they just put a package plan in?
Or job jotting.
It's not,
A job jotting.
Porta potty?
Yeah, same thing.
the table that uses 2203, they're rather robust types of development, medical and dental, administrative, restaurant. They would presumably build their own pump station and pump up, get access to a sewer. Those are pretty robust type of projects and improvements that could occur there.
Okay.
I guess our question is this an ideal location for such a facility? If we already compromise the full THM to the remaining 10-acre awkward shaped parcel.
Yeah, but if you look at it, that entranceway, that could be a nice entranceway to a
Yes.
business service. I don't know if it would be mailings and stuff like that, but that could be a nice entranceway to whatever you want to build back there.
Hospice care, the facility that's somewhat isolated, but
Yep.
still has access near the freeway. That could challenge or tackle a very difficult site to develop, given the topography.
It would be.
Yeah,
That's why it's empty.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's why nobody is jumping at it.
If you don't have anything else, Heather, perhaps I'll just get.
Well, I guess
Yeah.
one other comment
Yeah,
would
please.
be that the Town Hall neighborhood and the Town Hall Commons District,
Mm-hmm.
both are subject to the design review for commercial projects. And actually, in those two districts, they're supposed to follow the basics of Western Reserve style as far as like the architecture. So I guess that's unique to the Town Hall Commons and the Town Hall Neighborhood District. We've not had any projects come in subject to that design review yet. Everything has already been existing by the time we adopted these regulations. But I guess that would be something to point out, is that we were trying to look for more of a Western Reserve type architecture style within the Town Hall Commons and the Town Hall Neighborhood District.
Thanks, Heather. Let me turn to board members for comments or questions. Frank?
Right now, I think we covered everything that I would have a question about.
Hiram, any?
I was on the planning commission whenever we recommended make the whole thing R1 and get rid of THM. And I agreed. I thought that was a good idea, looking at what's going on there. But now that the guy owns more than that, and he's doing something with the 10 acres, I don't see any reason to change. I don't.
I guess my only comment is that may be a piece of information that we didn't know coming to this meeting, but perhaps what
Oh, yeah,
happens, he
yeah.
could sell it tomorrow again.
He could.
So if we just look at it objectively, as a THM, does it make sense?
Well, if you look at it with the big picture, I'd say make everything R1.
Based on what's already been
Get rid of
started to
THM.
develop, to take your point, well, the way it's being already started to be developed, it probably would make more sense to do it R1. Because that area's, which we intended for the township complex to be all here, it's not there anymore. the way I see it. You know, it's been going down and down and down, and the likelihood of those kind of businesses that we thought would materialize there as a complex is not going to materialize anymore because of that. Because everything now that's been focused on
I
that
agree
kind of development, we already have at the township center on 44 that's now being concentrated on that type of development.
Well, we've kind of obsoleted the town hall network or neighborhood as a zoning thing. There's one piece left.
Right.
Why not just make it R1 and then we don't have to manage that category of district anymore? Because it's just one little island,
Correct.
you know?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you. Andy, any question, comment?
I don't know. I guess I'm ambivalent on that. I don't know that it really strikes me one way or the other as far as any advantage to. I think if we were going to rezone it as a initiative from the zoning commission, it would be the smartest thing to do would be to just rezone it to R1. You know, but then we have to look at the condition. You know, to me, it's always about the conditional uses. What we have, what could potentially go in there that would impact that area? Does it, but look at the, like Rich said, I mean, it just leaves us with this one little island of property that there's no other like property in the township, right?
No, that's right. That's right.
So what would be the real advantage of, keeping it there when it's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of similar conditional uses in R1 that there are in the town hall neighborhood too. There was a lot of things that Heather mentioned that were in there. Aside from like a restaurant or which is conditional. Restaurants are conditional. The hospice I think was conditional. There was a few of the allowable uses, but a lot of the usages were conditional uses. So similar to, I just think holding off and hoping that it turns into office space or a nice little plaza or something that's going to include those things I think that's a pipe dream. I guess I would probably rather see it get zoned to R1 and get rid of the town hall neighborhood altogether. I think it would certainly, if you look at that area and what's zoned along Ravenna Road there, what's zoned along Concord-Hamden Road there, with the R1 on both sides of the road, I mean, to turn the rest of that into R1 would certainly be very consistent with the rest of the zoning in that particular area. You wouldn't be spot zoning or doing something that would be untoward with regards to what's there now. And I don't think you'd be putting yourself in a bad situation with the property owner. I think moving it to R1 would probably give them, I would think, even more flexibility to use than it would just leaving it at town hall. Because there's no residential in town hall, right? So.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it's surrounded by residential with a little tiny corner touched on the, on the town hall commons. So just a tiny little piece that touches, on that one little section over there. It's pretty much landlocked, other than the access from, that little strip that's an access. So I'd probably thinking about it, I'd probably be more inclined to change it to R1 and then just completely, just abandon the town hall neighborhood.
And
Thanks,
plus,
Andy. Yeah.
and plus the church being there already, that falls into an R1 anyway.
Right.
So,
It seems to me that this ball started rolling down the hill when the rezoning on Concord-Hampton started.
Right.
yes.
And it seems inevitable to me, even it preceding me. But then when we rezoned here earlier this year, the lots on the north side, I remember the discussion about how many years, when would anything else develop? The property's difficult to develop, expensive to develop. If I had to go back and say the Town Hall Neighborhood District and the idea of creating that for the township, it wouldn't be on this parcel with all the contour, the topography and the limitations that it has, let alone while there's some contiguous property owner now, it has limited right-of-way access, but the right-of-way access being a strip between two homes, or potentially two duplexes, is not ideal. So,
They were hoping way back then that because the township hall being where it is,
yeah,
that it would be a focal point to bring people in, and it would be like a thriving community where people would come and walk around, and stuff like that, and shop and everything, and the township hall would be part of that focal area.
Yeah.
Well, that hasn't happened, as you can see over the years, and that part of the thought, I think, is gone. So,
and over the years, it's been redirected to the west side of 44 now anyway.
right, exactly.
So this is a real good discussion. Thank you, members. Anything else to add? Kathleen?
I don't have anything at this
Anything
time.
else? If there's nothing else, being a work session, I think I like the idea of maybe just reviewing this, taking this into consideration, in particular the conditional uses. And once you brought it up, Andy, I didn't want to just scan over them real quick here at the meeting, but maybe give it some due diligence and look at it. Maybe we keep this on the agenda for next month, and maybe it becomes unless the board has any objection, if we had a draft, is that appropriate? A draft amendment to change to R1, or is that would be the next step, or do we need to take a motion to do that?
I don't think
Yeah, I think all we
we
need to
a
do is
motion
just
to
make
do
a
that.
motion, right, Michael? Just make a
Yeah.
motion to change the zoning to R1, and then that would set the wheels in motion for a public hearing, right?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm sort of
Yes.
trying to read your
Please.
mind here, but I think you would like some written document in front of you for further workshop discussion before formalizing it.
That's kind of what I was trying to do without making it a formal,
Yeah, I think you can do that as part of the work session, and then.
part of the work session.
Yeah, it doesn't trigger anything in terms of what you mentioned, Andy.
Yeah.
And at least for me, I always think it's helpful to have some written document in front as opposed to an
Yes.
abstract discussion
Yes.
on that regard.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah, because
I-
once we would have a motion to
That-
rezone it, then that would set that whole process,
That
those
sets-
wheels in motion,
that's right.
Yeah, so that would certainly shorten the time cycle to review. If
Right.
we keep it in work session, we have lots of time to, kind of
Right.
noodle it.
Well, and I guess the other thing is, just so we're clear to help Heather with the drafting, at this point, the draft would entail a rezoning of the THN. What it would do
Eliminate.
would be the elimination of the THN district in its entirety and the rezoning of the subject property within that current district to residential R1
Right,
for purposes of having something in front of us for the next meeting.
right.
Rich, is that what you wanted, basically?
Yes, without a formal
Yeah,
motion.
yeah.
If that's acceptable to the board, just so we have, and continue the work session.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question, and then Mike, this is also for you. If you want to chime in on this, would it be easier instead of rezoning to R1? Would it make more sense, or would it be easier to review the conditional uses and eliminate conditional uses that we don't like from because the THN is its own zoning
Right.
entity right now, and it has a set of conditional uses and allowed uses. Would it be easier to remove and or massage the conditional uses and narrow it down maybe to where you would be more comfortable leaving it as THN and kind of paring down the conditional uses versus just rezoning it? Because I think retooling the R1 conditional uses would be a much more arduous task than just the THN, right? Yes, no, maybe? I don't know.
Well, if you rezone it to R1, you don't have to worry about conditional uses per se. They're already established in the R1 district in there.
Right.
So,
But Andy's worried about the conditional uses in R1 maybe not being,
I'm not worried about them. I'm just thinking that would it be easier to control what goes in there, leaving it THN? I'm just looking at the path of least resistance in the process. That's all. A wholesale change to R1, or retool the conditional uses in the THN and then kind of ratchet it down and really limit it. But then, what does that do to the potential of the property if you really kind of ratchet down a lot of the conditional uses? And that certainly is going to narrow the field of
Right.
people that would be interested in doing anything with it. So,
Right.
what does that in essence do? That may in essence create a parcel that's just going to sit there doing nothing for God only knows how many more years.
Right.
Would it suit the township better to rezone it to R1 because there's probably more potential for it to be developed moving? Is our goal to help get it developed, or is our goal to help it stay the way it is? If the goal is to help it stay the way it is, then we should probably consider leaving it THN and narrow down the conditional uses. If our goal is to help it get developed, then it would probably be better to rezone it to R1, and then you pretty much know the path it's going to take at that point. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. That's all. I'm
yeah,
saying.
well, I'm not sure what the goal ultimately is,
Right.
other than what we know. And I say that because if Heather's going to do something, we need to.
Yeah, it would be good to give her some direction on it.
Yeah, but the other thing is, what triggered this, as I understand it from what Heather indicated, was that the Planning Commission itself, and part of a review process, made a recommendation
Yes.
basically to eliminate the district itself. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what triggered it. Now, we don't have to listen per se to the Planning Commission in that, but
They do,
The
they
purpose
do
of the
provide
goals-
sage advice every once in a
yeah,
while.
the purpose of the goals, Andy, is really the bailiwick of the members themselves.
Right.
You know, so, you know, either way, it's not like someone's making a wrong decision. It's what your personal, this is where the subjective comes in, Rich. It's up to you and the members to,
I appreciate the comments, Andy.
Yeah, I'm
I'm looking at it in terms of uniformity and consistency.
Right.
To pick a few of the conditional uses off on the THN or keep THN doesn't, I couldn't even discern any of them. And like you just said, it makes it even more restrictive than it already is. In terms of the purpose or objective to rezone it to R1 to make it developable, that's not my thinking either. It was more of the consistency and approach to
yeah, more uniformity.
uniformity.
Well, I go back to Rich's comment. I mean, you've got a whole section in the zoning resolution that's dedicated to town hall
Yeah.
neighborhood that has a 10-acre parcel that's
One piece of property. in the
yeah, one piece of property in the whole township. I mean, it kind of, to
Yeah,
me,
it makes no sense.
that's why I think probably the planning commission's recommendation was to get rid of it, because it's just one piece of property in the
Yeah.
entire township.
Yeah.
How many acres? You know, it's 10 acres.
Yeah,
It's just that, to me, it would probably make more sense to rezone it to R1 to be consistent.
yeah.
You know, to just get that off the books.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good idea when it was done, that the intent was there, but then when the R1 rezoning started down that corridor there, that really kind of threw a monkey wrench in it. I mean, there's very little justification leaving it as THN, to me. You know, anyway. That's what
Okay.
I feel.
Once 44 started developing over the years as it has, this became less and less desirable to go in that direction,
Right.
you know, so.
So, thank you. I mean, if, without objection from the board, I would ask Heather to draft an amendment for this conversion to R1, but to continue the work session so that we can at least reconsider it again next month.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to put together like a side-by-side table of uses, so you compare R1 and Town Hall neighborhood to eliminate any concern about what the uses potentially permitted or conditionally permitted uses are. So you
That would be very helpful.
quickly take a look at, you know,
Very
what the
good.
change would really mean as far as
For our next
future.
work session. Thank you, Heather.
All right.
That'd be great. All right, that, like I said, I don't know if we want to we'll move on to the second item. on our new business is a work session to review Section 16 PUD and RCD Development District process. And Heather's provided us with a flow chart for consideration and discussion here, along with excerpts from Section 16 accompanying that. This furthers our discussion we've had before on the process, and really appreciate this moving forward in terms of discussion with the board, because I think it's an important consideration on this process. So, Heather, if you want to begin, maybe start with a
Sure.
walkthrough, please.
Right, so this was the flow chart that I had provided to the commission a few months ago. Just kind of goes through our, how we process planned unit developments under our Section 16. So we have two different planned unit development districts, the PUD and the RCD. The Ohio Revised Code actually tells townships how you can do planned unit developments. We chose the one option where the applicant would need to come in and request to rezone the property, and then at the same time get their preliminary development plan approved by the township. So that is the first step, basically, and I'm not going to talk about this verbatim or anything, but they go through, they submit the application, they have the public hearing with the zoning commission, who then makes the recommendation to the trustees, who then has a separate public hearing and then votes on that to make a decision. If they vote to approve the PUD or the RCD, then it becomes effective 30 days from the date of that decision being made. Then there starts the process, which we do have a little bit control over how we want to put this in the zoning resolution, is how do you approve the final development plan? What is the process for that? Some other communities do. Some other townships, they have a different review process for their final development plan. It's all over the place how folks want to do this. Like Liberty Township, which is in Butler County, they have the zoning commission review the final development plan during a public hearing, and then they are the ultimate decision-making body on the final development plan. And they also approve, the zoning commission would also approve any modifications to a previously approved final development plan. Whereas in Concord Township right now, any modifications to an approved development plan are reviewed by the trustees. There's a couple different levels, major or minor, minor approved by staff, major approved by the trustees. There's another township in Licking County where they have a two-step review of their final development plan. It kind of is, it's almost the same step that they went through to get the rezone done. So the zoning commission reviews the final development plan and makes their recommendation to the trustees, and then the trustees have a separate meeting, and then they approve the final development plan. So just keep in mind, the more reviewing, the more time these developers have to, the more expensive it is for them to go through this process. Painesville Township in Lake County does the exact same thing we do. The final development plan is approved by the township trustees. And then, there was another township down in Delaware County. Zoning commission has a public hearing, and then they recommend to the trustees again, who then have their own separate public hearing on the final development plan. So I know there was some conversation with the last RCD that was approved by the township trustees, and there was some discussion about from this board that you didn't get a chance to see, the final plan, and as you know, the process right now doesn't require the zoning commission's review of the final development plan. So part of the reason to put this on the agenda is just to have a conversation about that review process, to take a look at our section 1614 to see if we need to make any changes or clarifications even to the process on how we're currently reviewing the final development plan. And then the second part of that would be, how we're reviewing modifications from an approved development plan, to see if there were any reasons to change what some of the what might be considered major, or the process of reviewing those changes to a final development plan. So that's kind of what I provided to you today. I didn't have, just as a starting kind of point. Some of the other communities that I looked at, like under their final development plan process, they have, they elaborate a little bit more on time limits on getting plans approved, allow for extensions of approval of plans, and we kind of just have really one sentence on how the the process, how it goes as far as getting the trustees to approve the final development plan. And then it goes into this whole discussion about if the first phase hasn't been submitted in 12 months, then you have this public hearing. I think we might be able to improve the language here a little bit to make it cleaner. I know that I was struggling a little bit with this on how to advise developers as far as this process. So if it's confusing a little bit for me, myself, I think we might need to make some changes to make it, make the process more streamlined or clear within the text itself.
First time I read this for the Tannerwood project, I was confused beyond belief. And it prompted this, asking for this flow chart was helpful. Now I can see why it seems so convoluted and involved, but even in text, it was hard to comprehend very easily. So maybe just to begin discussion, Heather, I was speaking like sometimes the lessons learned and you look at past projects, relate to Canterwood. It seemed to me that the trustees, it seems to me, I can't speak for them, they were put in an awkward position to approve a plan that's had a lot of changes after we saw it, and then we never saw it again. So and it got final approval. And you mentioned there's town Liberty, I think you said, where the zoning commission has the final development approval. And so this probably falls to the final to the trustees to get their feeling. I didn't ask the trustees if they're comfortable with reviewing the final development plan. Perhaps they are. I figured as public bodies, the trustees, they have far more things to govern for the township and rely on the zoning commission for planning and zoning, those types of issues. But if they prefer that keep it that way, then that's where my position was coming from. It seemed to me that the zoning commission could serve the township and the trustees in a better capacity, given we're walking through the project from the preliminary, the pre-application, all the way through. It seems to me we're in a better position to review and approve pre and final plans, but that's just my thought.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't talked to the trustees regarding their comfort level as far as that or anything, so.
Okay.
Okay. But being that you also do site plan review, that might be another reason to consider, this board being able to look at the final development plan as well, so.
We were established supposedly as a recommending body for the trustees. I think the way, especially what's happened at Canterwood Farms, is outrageous. It should have never gone. And going by there, as I do practically every day, and seeing what is developed, or I should say, just break that whole land down, really is an eyesore. And if we could have stopped it, I think we should have had the liberty to be able to stop something like that happening. As being the board that the trustees look to for guidance, So we should have the last say-so and go through all that process rather than what happened up there. I think it's a disgrace, to be honest with you.
Well, I kind of agree, Frank. But I think the clearing and grubbing, that's a process that's going to happen anyway. my understanding is that the plans the planned improvements changed significantly from what we saw.
Oh, yeah.
And where I think it's conditional approval from us. Or, I forget, but anyhow.
The board had recommended approval.
Yeah, okay,
recommended.
yeah, recommended. And then there were significant changes.
Big time, big time. How many times did he go back to you, to the township, and for all kinds of changes? Roughly, I'm
Probably
like-
done.
I mean, it had to be numerous numbers of times, right? It sounded like the trustees were always looking at something
Right.
else that he wanted to change.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should know this. It was it was definitely once, if not twice, they went back to the trustees.
At least, if not more.
There's been a lot of different renderings in between that have not been
Yes.
in front of them, but just
Yes.
being reviewed by staff.
Yes.
Correct, but there was one formal request for a major modification that the trustees did have a public hearing for, to reconsider that.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can
Yeah,
interject,
please.
Mr. Chairman, in looking at the two-page document that Heather gave us, I'm looking at 1616. And the way that 1616 at the top of the second page, the way that I look at this, paragraph B, if the modification is classified as minor, said modifications shall be subject to the procedures set forth in 1614, which is the first page. Okay, that's confusing enough, we already went over that. But if you go down to C, it says major modifications shall include changes to the approved plan that involve, and it lists A through H. When I looked at A through H, each one of those items is what we look at as a zoning commission. So why shouldn't a major modification come back to the zoning commission? Because that's what we're saying here. Review this, an increase in traffic circulation of public utility. We review that, or we have it reviewed so we can look at the report. Increase in the density. We review that initially. As part of our initial review of the package. So in my opinion, if you go over to the flow chart, I think some of this stuff on page 3, it says major modifications, Board of Trustees sets public hearing. I think right at the major modifications, it's gotta come back to the zoning commission. Shouldn't go back to the trustees, it should come back here. And then we take a look at it, we review it, then we provide a recommendation up to the trustees. And on page 2 of the 3-page of the flow chart, where it has trustees deny final plan in 2 places, where does it go from there? No place, it just dead ends. So, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Aaron. Comment right side. Got you first.
What I don't know is if we took the original plan that we approved and what it is today and set them side by side, how many would be minor, how many would be major? I don't know what the changes are. I personally don't know. You know, I don't really want to judge the development at this point until it's done, because the final product probably will be pretty nice with landscaping and, you know, but I don't know what the differences are between the two. So I can't really comment.
On that particular case, but in general, I think Hiram is speaking that
Yeah.
there are major
Yeah,
modifications,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is kind of what I was relating here earlier, is seems like it's putting the trustees in a position where we're probably better informed.
Yeah, true.
History,
Better suited to make that
better suited to assist them in doing it right.
So how would you trigger a second review? Major changes, any major changes? Or any grouping of minor? I don't know. 5 minors makes a major? I don't know.
Well, if you look at C1, A through H. There's a listing of major modifications.
Yes.
Okay. These
So-
are major, and minors showing anything not classified there,
Well,
but
that's up to the discretion of the zoning department.
Yeah.
That's right.
if Heather felt that there were major changes, I don't see anything wrong with us doing a secondary review.
I would suggest we take minor out completely, and if we just say changes, no matter what it is, should come to us. You know?
Yeah,
This
Well,
minor,
yeah, if we have a typo
26 minors.
or something like that on the plan,
well,
that's something
typos
like
one thing. Yeah, I mean, there's discretion, of
It's
course.
kind of
Yeah.
mundane too.
But,
Frank, I would, the professionals that the township hires, and as a professional myself, the minor changes can be really subject to review by a professional. But, and I think that's why we have a professional zoning inspector and person to do that type of work.
and that's fine, I'm not
Yeah.
taking anything away from
Yeah,
them, you know,
but-
as their qualifications. But sometimes I think they have questions too that might pop
What if it
up.
was strictly at Heather's discretion whether we had a secondary review?
Exactly. At that point, you know, we know what the major ones would be. If a minor one comes up and she says, well, no, I don't feel comfortable with that, maybe I'll bring it up. That kind of thing, you know?
I think right now it is that way. You decide, it's gonna
Well,
go
I-
back to the trustees.
If a modification comes in, I mean, I look at this list and determine,
Yeah.
is it classified as major? And if it's not, then, at that point, I have to make a decision on that. I have seen some zoning resolutions that say that they do give the zoning inspector discretion to possibly put it in front of the zoning commission. I'm not sure how our legal department would feel about discretion in the zoning resolution or not, but
I think it's important to categorize what, at least in general, what major modifications are, as
Yeah.
it does here.
right.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea though of major modifications doing the two-step though, just to, because that would give you guys a second look at that if it's something. did
Well, let
change.
me ask you a question, Heather. How many times do you get modifications after we've approved it? Is there a lot? Is that a pretty frequent process, or is it
well-
pretty rare?
Well, I've only dealt with a few of the RCDs and PUDs since I've been with the township. Now with villas, they requested changes. Lily Farm did not. That was a pretty simple RCD. Eagle Point, they did make a change that had to go back in front of the trustees for some different.
Was that a major modification? Was that-
Yes, it was major because they were taking away some open space that was was counted as open
Right.
space and making the right of way right.
What about
wide.
minor? What about just
Minor,
minor?
I mean, there's all
modification?
kinds of little minor stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I would be
But-
more concerned about the major stuff.
Yes.
And I think anytime there's a major modification, I think it should come back to us. I think it should come back. I think anytime there's a major modification, it should come back to us. And then we can figure it out.
agree.
Because I mean, when it's a major modification, that's not, those modifications would have had a direct impact, I think, on our decision,
On our
whether to approve
That's right.
the project to begin with. You know, like exactly what happened with Canterwood. Had those changes been put in front of us at the time we were deliberating that whole approval process, I can tell you right now, I wouldn't have approved it.
Yeah,
I would have voted no.
I would have voted no.
You know, based on what but then they kind of slipped it past the goalie and, got it in, and then they went in front of the trustees and then started making changes, and I don't think, and there's no fear of, there's no fear of consequences with that. I mean, it's pretty minor, where if they knew they were gonna have to come back in front of the zoning commission then and re-present their case with these major modifications, I think that could potentially deter that, or would certainly give them pause to come in with major modifications.
Right.
They might think, well, maybe we don't want to go back in front of the zoning commission on this. Maybe we should tool that down to a point where it's not a major modification. Or maybe we should just abandon that thought altogether. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think you're right. I think there should be an opportunity for the zoning commission to see a major modification and have a reconsideration on our vote, because I think some of those major modifications certainly would impact my vote.
Part of me is thinking the trustees would appreciate that we would get involved and help take some of their burden away. Let me ask this question, Heather, unrelated to PUD or RCD, a typical site plan. If you get a revision on a site plan that we've approved, major, do you consider bringing it back to us, or is that you just deal with major site plan change? I don't know if I can cite an example, but I never saw the site plan for the, sorry, escapes me now. I was concerned with the lack of, there was no detail on the stormwater. I forget the plan. Was it for the
Oh, that was for the Auburn Road.
Auburn, yeah.
Yeah,
the
that was
same-
for that, yeah.
Yeah, it was incomplete. The plans were, and now they're abandoning it altogether. So, okay, so
So on that particular site plan that the board conditionally approved, they submitted what they considered their final site plan in an attempt to meet all your conditions.
yes,
Marty and I reviewed the revised quote-unquote final site plan, and they made all kinds of other modifications that were not asked by this board. So at that point, we formally notify them that, look, you've got all these other changes, which based under the site plan review section, I'm just looking at it right here, there is a process for deviations to a site plan, which would trigger it to come back to you.
it does. Okay,
Yes.
okay. So
So
the reason I asked
there's major and minor modifications to the
Yeah.
site plan as well.
So the reason I ask is because sometimes you ask when you know the answer, and I knew the answer because this would be consistent
Yeah.
with that. Even though I know site plan versus PUD and RCD,
Yeah.
trying to make some consistency
Right.
in the legislation or the code. Okay.
Now, the criteria for what they consider, major versus minor is different.
Yep.
So that's something else that you could take a look at too, like these major modifications that are listed here. Do these make sense to you as far as what you would want to see? While I was looking at some other communities' resolutions, they obviously, lots of folks have different things listed. One that I thought this board might want to consider adding would be kind of related to the street patterns. One community had that a major modification would be if there was a change in the internal street pattern within the development, or where the new roads are going to intersect with existing streets. Now, I know we have something that talks about an increase in traffic circulation and public utility usage, which is a little bit more obscure, I think.
Yeah.
Because I feel like A and D would somewhat be tied together, because if you're going to change the use or character of the development, that could automatically increase the traffic, or I guess it could decrease the traffic.
Well, yeah, that's
but-
A is a domino falling
Yeah.
over. I mean,
Yes.
A starts to tick over a bunch of other of those modifications,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, that's 8 major modifications. The only one that I'm just a little not too sure about, a reduction in required pavement width. That seems a little bit. That one seems a little iffy to me. But I mean, the other ones, I think they've all good. There's plenty of meat on the bone on those for a major, what I would consider a major modification. Maybe come up with a replacement for G.
Replacement for G, and or in consideration of what we recently changed in RCD, amended, regarding the code, some of the rules for calculating density. Perhaps I know there's increase in densities here.
Right.
and maybe that doesn't weigh in here, but perhaps we could review the major mods to see if there's anything else to add, delete, modify, as we consider a change, if we want to propose such a change in the process. I got a question kind of off the wall, because it came up when I was looking at this the other day. The R8, I think it's R8 residential district versus RCD. Can you explain what the difference is between R8 and RCD?
Well, the RCD was set up as a planned unit development.
Yes.
And the R8, I don't know if, I'd have to look at the history of how that got into the zoning resolution. There's no vacant land that is zoned R8. There is really only one development that exists that falls under that. And that is the, over at a Little Mountain Country Club.
The what?
What is that? I'm sorry. Yeah. Where Little Mountain Golf Course is?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so right now that is just a straight, traditional district. But I don't know the history. I don't know if the zoning was in place and then they came in and did the development, or if they did the development first and then rezoned it to that. I don't really know the history. But it does require certain minimum lot sizes and requires an open space.
So that's the minimum lot sizes.
So I mean, the main difference is probably, how much open space you have to have, what you're allowed to do in the open space, obviously, because you can have active recreation here versus in the RCD, it's passive and for preservation in the open space.
If memory serves me, when we did when we were doing that R8, there was at that point in time, there was a lot of discussion about wanting to kind of move to the Kirtland minimum, like 5 acre lot. There was a lot of discussion about, especially regarding the eastern section of Concord Township, because of the challenged topology and everything else that was going on. There was some conversations and some leanings towards going to a larger minimum lot size standard, like 5 acres or something in that neighborhood, instead of the, I think, what is it, 2 that exists now with, so, and I think that's what prompted that process, if I remember right. That was because there was a lot of discussion about large lot development and kind of changing the whole township in the eastern part of the township to a large lot development, so that it would be the bigger the lots, the more feel of an open space type of a thing, and then that kind of morphed in, that kind of went from the large lot development kind of pushed towards towards the conservation development, where it was like, well, what if we make the developer designate a certain percentage of the property to open space, so that would serve the same purpose without because we felt at that time the discussion was, you start putting everybody on 5 acre lots, you lose the whole concept of neighbors. You're so far, at 5 acre lots, you're so far removed from each other that you're really kind of in your own little island. You're only, you're not. So we thought, if we keep the half acre lot size where you've got next door neighbors and it's more of a neighborly type of a thing, but carve out a big chunk of that towards open space, you could achieve the look of large lot without actually having large, you know what I'm saying? And there was, I think there was a lot of, there's been a lot of opinions written and some studies done on the effects of large lot developments in communities, and they're not all positive. There was a lot of negative.
As I recall, they
that
wanted to put a big development in there, and that used to be a hunting club up there where the golf course is.
That was TRW's.
Yeah, it was a
was
hunting
their-
club.
yeah.
And so the neighbors didn't want this big development all crammed in, so they fought against it, and the compromise, I think, as Andy said, was to come up with use the golf course as kind of a buffer and then reasonable sized lots.
There was just that phase that we went through in considering large lot development, and what was a fair compromise with the large lot development versus because sewer and water wasn't really available at that time on the eastern part of the township. It was all pretty much well and septic, and there was kind of a process where they were trying to discourage developments that were going to be strictly well and septic because of the environmental concerns, with that regard. And so it was like, well, we'll wait until we get sewer. And then sewer and water started to become more available, and that kind of knocked that discussion down a little bit. So I think that's when all that happened. That would probably give you a pretty good feel of the history behind that. So.
Is there a reason we skipped R5 and R7?
We had an R5 district.
We had an R5.
Yeah, I think we did. We
Yeah.
got rid of that one, right?
Senior.
Yeah, that was the senior. That was the senior
Yeah,
one.
we did get rid of that one.
We carved
Not
that
sure
one
about
out.
the R7.
That one kind of went the way we're planning with the town hall neighborhood thing. It kind of went the way of THN.
The other question I had, Heather, on the flow chart. So we talks about pre-application conference down and this applies to both PUD or RCD. In the middle on page 1, it says about public display of proposed amendment. Correct?
That's basically the legal notice.
Oh,
Is that what you're, we would put the
yeah,
legal.
it's not like we were doing it. It's
No.
yeah,
I
okay.
notify the public on your behalf
Okay,
that
it's
the hearing,
Just
yes,
terminology.
yes.
Okay, amendment. Okay.
Heather, I have a question. Just above that, it says 120 days maximum for the application to State Highway Director for review. That doesn't fit the 20 to 40 days. You see that, what I'm
Yeah.
talking? What happens if they take over 40 days?
I'm not sure. We haven't had to do one of these yet.
That's a good enough answer for me.
Just change it to 40.
Yeah.
Are these
See what
Not
the
a
State
big
Highway
route.
does.
Are these time constraints? Are we free to adjust these?
No.
Or is
Not in this
by
first-
ORC?
This follows the Ohio Revised Code
does.
as far as, yeah.
Going back to that major modification thing, just for a moment. Yeah, you look at that list. There's the required pavement width was one. I think that's kind of a toothless major modification. I don't know that that's a huge. Somebody would have to explain to me why that would be a
Somebody
big
might
impact.
want street side parking. Some of the streets allow parking on the sides. My street's actually pretty narrow. Yours is wider, I think, but they do vary, and some allow parking at the curb.
But see there, there is a F right above it is a reduction of off-street parking and loading space.
True.
So that kind of is that
Maybe that ties together, yeah.
is that redundant? Because when you look at that one in conjunction with the reduction in pavement widths,
Yeah.
if F and G,
That's true.
is that
F&G
really
could be combined.
is that redundant? Can those two be combined, and then we could put another come up with a better major modification than those? Because I think changing the use of character of development, that's really good. Increasing overall coverage of structures, I think, is good. Density obviously is good. Open space, messing with the open space, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we should, that would, and then reduction of the required minimum acreage, obviously, that would knock it out of being a PUD. That certainly is a major modification too. So, but that reduction of off-street parking and loading space and the reduction of required pavement widths, to me, I think you could lump those together and come up with another major modification that we would want to add to that list. Was there anything that really jumps out at you, Heather, that you would like to see on that list that's not on there? as far as a major modification? Because right now it's black and white. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
And just to
Here's
give a
your-
little insight on your questioning on the pavement widths, I mean, I don't think I've had anyone come in and ask to reduce the pavement widths, but I know that just from my experience doing plan review in conjunction with the fire department, access and pavement widths is a big deal
Oh,
from
sure,
a safety
right.
perspective. So I know that they follow the Ohio fire code on that, and we tried, and they work with our zoning regulations as well to find
Right.
something that works for everyone. But sometimes there is give and take on those things, and I prefer maybe to leave it in just in the event where the township does approve a plan with, for example, an 18-foot wide, common access drive to a couple units or something like that. And then they come back later at final and they go down to, 15, is the fire department going to be comfortable with, 4 units coming off that or not, where they thought we approved something at 18 feet. So I kind of prefer that we maybe leave that in. We haven't had one yet, but just in case.
Well, I'm not saying
yeah.
to remove it, but
Yeah.
maybe combine those
Oh.
two,
Yeah.
and come up with a better one.
Maybe we could try to reword something.
Yeah, rework it to where F and G are one major modification,
Yeah.
and then we could put another, if there's another major modification you think might make sense to add to it,
Well, the one
massage.
I mentioned previously, like if you're concerned about where proposed streets are going to intersect, I don't know if that's something that you feel would be significant and a change that you'd want to look at.
I think, I'll tell you what, I think something that would reflect the buffers, especially when we're transitioning to into another neighborhood or another development.
Thank you, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
when we're
Yes,
looking at those,
yeah.
because
Some of the
those
new-
tend to get stepped on
Yes.
pretty regularly too. They'll agree, okay, yeah, we'll lop off a lot
Yes.
or two on the entrance into the development to help the transition
Yes.
into the new development. And then that kind of goes bye-bye when the final thing is done. They kind of, they didn't want to give that up as freely as they thought they would. Because, and that's, to me, is important because that impacts people's, if you're living next to where a new development's going in, and there's, there's like there's going to be a hard stop right from your property right into the new development. If there's a little bit of a buffer, it helps with the transition. I think that's pretty important to the people that are already there, not impacting their quality of life and the value of their property, and use. So I would rather, seeing that buffer in that transition process to me is pretty important. So if they want to if they come in and say, oh yeah, well, we'll lop off 2 lots on each side of that street where it intersects or where it butts up to the new development or where they're extending that street into the new development. And then all of a sudden when they come back with the final, they go, yeah, well, we decided to take those out. That to me would be a major modification because that's going to have a direct impact on people that are living there. Yes, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
So pavement width would go up with F added to the,
Yeah, combine it with.
and then G would be buffer size.
Or I don't know. I'm just
No, I mean,
throwing suggestions out there, that's all.
I might suggest there's more, but I might suggest that we allow Heather to continue this work session. Obviously, you've encountering these with more study from us in the next month. I think I might have 1 or 2.
Okay.
And then perhaps to further, similar to the first one, if we could further this work session with a draft of how we would adjust 16 for the zoning commission doing final development plan approval to consider at our next meeting.
Okay.
If, without objection from the board, I'm hearing pretty much on board with that. No pun intended.
The board's on board.
The board's on board.
The board's on board.
No, it's just I don't know that I have the answer to how that. I would defer more to Heather because she's the one that sees those modifications more than we do. Once we approve, just like with this whole Canterwood thing. I mean, you know, had we not been in the loop in that process, I wouldn't have known that they came in with all those major changes after we approved it. I mean, so she sees it more than we do. I would defer to her to see if there was any other things that she's seen that she feels would make sense to put on that list. If it means adding another one, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I really think that when there's major modifications, it should come back to the zoning commission. I don't think it should fall on the trustees at that point. It should get kicked back to us because I don't necessarily know that they would get the same outcome with major modifications than they did with the first time. And then they make their major modifications, and we never get to see it again. You know, we don't. It's all on the shoulders of the trustees to come up with a decision.
And that's rough, because I went to a couple of trustees meetings.
Yeah, and I don't want to go. I'm not one to be traipsing into a trustee meeting as a zoning commissioner to voice my opposition to
And they
something that's
looked like
going
they were
on.
stifled because of Reby coming in there and hitting with this stuff.
Right.
You know, it didn't look like they were comfortable making a decision.
Right.
That's my opinion. So,
I'd rather it get kicked back to us for consideration. And I don't know how big of a to do that is, but I would, you know, it may change their attitude.
It's good to hear all that. So not to belabor the subject, but
Right.
Canterwood is an example. If I recall, the initial preliminary, they had 3 lots facing Hoos, fronting Hoos,
Yes,
and then it changed.
3?
yeah,
Yeah,
To
it
4,
was.
or-
It went to 4, didn't it?
right,
yeah.
Because
then
they're
there
trying
was
to keep the
another-
number, they lost
yeah.
one here, they put one there.
right.
But changing the character of the development, I don't know where that falls, but that, for me, that's major,
Yeah,
when you're changing lots around going.
Well, I think changing the character of the development that's a good general.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty loose.
yeah.
There's a lot of
Yes.
things that could fall within that that could cause that to be a major modification. So I like
Yeah.
changing
Yeah.
the character of the development. There's a lot of things that could happen that could do that could force that to come back to us. I like that.
Obviously, that's kind of a broad brush,
Yes.
Heather, that even if it changes the number of lots or things like that, that's character of the development. If they
Right.
have 59 lots and now they're pushing through 61,
Right.
you know, something like that.
So that's a major
major.
change.
Yeah.
Because that's a density
Without
increase.
saying, well, that's, increasing the density.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a density increase. That trips a lot of triggers on that process.
We've got a lot of items.
Yeah.
And they were moving ponds around and stuff.
Right.
That's changing the character.
So anyway,
Well, thank you for that discussion. Without objection from the board, I'm going to defer the third one. We're about an hour and a half into this meeting on section 22. Without objection.
No objection.
None here.
I think
like-
Mike objects.
I think
Mike's objecting.
I think this is the wisest decision that the
Yeah.
chairman could possibly
Yeah.
have made tonight.
Those things all night.
That's just my opinion.
Just saying.
Yeah. Next time, we'll make sure we solicit your opinion, Counselor. Under old business, do we have anything, members, under old business? None here. I'm going to throw out another one for the work session that we've already discussed. I call it old business, is the capital district, the conditional uses under capital district. Since, just reminded me, because Andy brought up conditional uses under the THN and R1, and I think we're wanting to at least consider review the conditional uses in the capital district.
Yeah,
Again, that kind of occurred there with the sheets.
Unfortunately, the horse is out of the barn.
The horse out of the barn, but to prevent the next horse out of the barn, thought maybe we just throw that,
And Mr. Chairman,
that's okay.
to increase the scope, which I don't like, should we review conditional uses throughout all the districts?
We'll take
It's a
one by
two-year project.
yeah.
Take it one by one?
by one.
Okay, we'll do capital first.
Capital first.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
think, the handout that I gave that was focusing on section 22 uses, and I also provided that we're deferring to next month.
Yes.
Was, my intent, I think, was to focus more specifically on, I think, the uses under the capital district, and then even looking under the capital district, the conditional use for the innovative site plan development, and taking a look at those specific
Well, good.
uses that are under that
Okay.
plan development. Because I know that the town center master plan had some recommendations in there that we never were able to accomplish as far as, you know, adding or subtracting uses with specifically within the capital district and the Inverness site plan development district. So maybe next month we focus on that a little bit more as part of our third work
Excellent.
session.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. Very good. Good. There being no other old business, our next meeting is scheduled for August the 2nd. If there are no, geez, the 2nd. If there's nothing else to come for this board, I think we will stand adjourned.
Okay.